when I started this research, I was definitely in the tree hugger hippie group, right? But after doing this research, I don't know, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I did learn to appreciate science a lot more. I thought the paper would be a lot more critical of science, even though maybe it still is, but I do appreciate it a lot more than I thought that I would. I didn't want to bring like my personal issues of GMOs into this because it was more about the debate rather than my personal opinions. But even with that, I had some shifts as well. Yeah.
One follow-up, if I might. This is taking us away from the GMO debate, but I think the folks that go into a health food store, right, I think it's kind of intriguing because of my observations, there's lots of stuff there that science has reviewed and said, this is good. And there's lots of stuff there that the label tells you is good, but science hasn't told you that. So we had this debate years ago. Should you take vitamin C? I don't know where we ended up with that debate. Is vitamin C good to prevent colds? I'm not 100% certain because the science, I think, is, I'm not sure where the science is in that stuff. But it's that example of how society will be accepting or not accepting. And John's comment earlier, do we adequately pay attention to the science? And I sometimes wonder with an issue with that, if there are lots of people buying into false hopes based on belief system that something will be good for them, and in fact the science may or may not tell them that. I'm not sure if there's a question wrapped up in that, but any observations, reflections from your research, the paper you pulled together, whether you would have any advice for me as I walk into that health food store?
I guess it's just to be critical. With those sort of examples, I think a lot of, especially in media, is like, oh, science says this, science says that, and it's so misrepresented. I recently saw a little clip from like a late night evening show about, they were making fun of like Good Morning America or something, like every morning like, oh, science says this, science says this, science says that, and it's a whole bunch of information, and then they would trace that back to that actual scientific paper, and it was totally different, the conclusions and the results, than what was actually represented in the public media. So I would say just being critical of it. And science can also change, right? Like you said with vitamin C, like who knows where the debate is.
In some ways, it takes us to a criticism of the media, doesn't it? Because the media is, I think there's a sense of duty or obligation that we have to cover both sides of the story. So climate change, people still question whether it's happening or not happening based on media reflections, when in fact the science is pretty certain as to the direction we're heading.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I guess my would be just to be critical of it and actually trace back to that actual research or that study that was done, right? And I think then a lot of people, even like in the mad cow case or in the Cumbria sheep, like, okay, they used some study, but they didn't actually go back to check it, to criticize it, or to even try to maybe like duplicate it or something. Again, I think the biggest element of science is to be critical of science itself, and often just kind of assume that, okay, it's okay, but then that critical aspect is forgotten. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, on to Al.
Okay, just to comment one thing on you, Wayne.
Yeah.
Jim Schute's father and his uncle were high opponents of vitamin C and research, and he wrote their biography, and Linus Pauling wrote the foreword. So it's very close to home.
Widely disliked in London, Ontario.
Yeah.
So the conclusion was I should take vitamin C or not? That's what it was.
Vitamin E.
Vitamin E, okay.
Yeah, you should take vitamin E in
All right.
large doses
All right,
every
great
day,
way to hear
according to
health
Dr.
demands.
Shute.
Anyways, congratulating getting to this point. I know it's a long journey for you. And one of the things that I think is really intriguing is when we talk about science, is science a process or a body of knowledge?
I would say both. Science does have its own kind of method and process that is unique to science. And it does, through that process, produces a specific knowledge that can only be produced through that process. So I would say it would be both.
there's Aboriginal writers who would argue that Indigenous knowledge is actually a product of Indigenous science. Is that
Oh, okay.
science? From your perspective, is that science?
I think I might just start thinking out loud for a second. I haven't heard Indigenous science before. Knowledge, yes, but not science. So I guess they're using it, they're using science as a process, right? Because they're saying indigenous knowledge is a product of indigenous science, right? So here they're using it as a process. I should write this down. Okay. Yeah, so they're using it, I guess, as a process here. And what was your question?
Is it science?
Is it science? Well, from what I've read, again, I guess it would depend on who you ask. So I mean, people like Vandana Shiva would, I guess she would take it maybe even the opposite way, that say that science is even local knowledge. So here they're using it as a process. I guess there could be some merit to the argument that, trial and error is also a science. That some knowledge, doesn't have necessarily this very concrete, rigorous process of doing experiments and so on. But they still obtain knowledge through some sort of process, and that could be trial and error. So Aboriginals, indigenous people, farmers also use a lot of trial and error to come up with some sort of knowledge. I don't know if I would call it science. It's a process, maybe that's specific to their knowledge, just like science is specific, the scientific method is specific to science. I guess there is merit to the argument too. But no, I don't think I would call it science because it doesn't follow the scientific method. But there is some method to it, as trial and error maybe.
So, what you do as a social scientist, is that science?
More so, yes.
How? What makes it science?
Again, would be the process, I guess, of that scientific method, even though it's applied to social sciences, but that method is still kind of there in place, right? We kind of have different theories, hypotheses, we try to, test them, or we go or we do it inductively or deductively, publish our results, expose them to different methods of review. I don't know, I guess maybe I don't have enough knowledge about indigenous knowledge and how that knowledge is produced, whether it's exposed to, kind of critical elements into different parts and to different processes of review or not.
So is what Copernicus did science? He didn't do it under peer review.
Well, yeah, I mean, not in the way that we had it now, I guess. But I guess I would still make the argument that science during the scientific revolution was exposed to a different type of review, maybe like to the public and to other fellow scientists, like through the Royal Society or something. Not necessarily in the form that we have now. But
Copernicus predated that.
yeah, but there was still there was bodies that disagreed with him and other scientists that, in the end, did agree with him, right? So
is that any different than the GMO scientists and the environmentalists?